Hello, everyone. All right, let's just wait. Good morning, everyone. Sorry for making you wait. I can see there are some people joining the webinar, so thank you for bearing with us. So we've been having a few technical issues this morning, hence the delayed start. We've lost a panelist along the way, so I was hoping he was in the attendees list. I don't think he is. So let's just wait a few minutes before we get started. So I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Sophie. I am the Marketing and Communications Manager at Flowminder. And with us today, we've got Afia Yuma, who's also at Flowminder and who's the DRC country manager overseeing all of our activities in the country. So we were meant to have with us Mr. Lamine Diba from the National Bureau of Statistics of the Gambia, but he's not online yet. So I'm wondering if there's a technical issues on his side and I wasn't able to reach him. So we may get started and hopefully he's going to join along the way. Maybe I can ask you all to introduce yourself in the chat so we know who's in the room. So Afia and I have got a few questions to ask each other, and then we're going to move to a Q&A. So we're really looking at it as a informal discussion. Afia, do you want to introduce yourself briefly?
Yep. So I am Afia Yuma and I am Flowminder's DRC country manager. And in my role, I support all of our activities in the DRC. And I've been at Flowminder for about 5 to 6 years. And I'm based in Southampton, but currently I am in DRC.
Great. Thank you, Afia. So maybe I can give a very brief introduction about who Flowminder is, and then we go into discussion. So the purpose of the session today is around how we engage with the private sector to unlock some data. And Flowminder is specialized in mobile data partnerships. So we are a nonprofit based in Sweden, with staff in the UK, in DRC, and a few other places. And we specialize in working with mobile network operators to process and analyze their metadata in order to produce population, mobility, and distribution estimates. So we're looking at about how people move in a country, and we're looking at internal displacement as well as routine internal mobility to support decision making. So whether there's a need for understanding how people move, usually or after, a natural hazard, for example. So that's what we specialize in, and we've been developing several mobile network partnerships in different countries, including the DRC. So today as well, we were meant to have Vodacom DRC joining us, and we have Lamine joining us. Amazing, Lamine, hi. Lamine, can you hear us?
Hello, Sophie. How are you?
I'm good. Welcome. We've
My
started
sincere
without
apologies,
you,
my
I'm
sincere
afraid.
apologies for coming late.
That's okay. How are you?
I'm so sorry. I just got into a lot of unforeseen issues.
That is
I
absolutely no problem.
they got
We're
disturbed.
very pleased to have you
My
with
God.
us. So don't worry. We've
Thank you
just
so much.
started
Thank you so much.
the introductions. Lamine, do you want to put your camera on if your internet is good enough? And do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so
Hi.
is the light okay?
Yeah, so far so good.
Thank you so much, Sophie. Yeah, I'm Lamin Diba, and I work for the Gambia Bureau of Statistics as principal statistician, and also the focal person for the big data and specifically the mobile phone data project in the Gambia.
Great. Great. Thank
Yeah,
you. Okay,
you're welcome.
so the plan today is to have an informal conversation between you and Afia. So as you were joining, I was just saying that we were meant to have a representative from Vodacom DRC joining us, but there's been also a little change. So it's just going to be the three of us. So maybe we can start with some questions, and then anyone in the chat, you can also put any question either in the Q&A box or in the chat, and we'll monitor the discussion. So maybe Afia, I'll start with you. Is from your perspective, what do you think makes privately held data and specifically mobile phone data strategically valuable for decision making, whether it's for different government agencies or for humanitarian actors? Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Sophie. I think it's quite important to kind of remind ourselves that when we talk about mobile network data, we're talking about millions of data points that can be processed and analyzed in order to gain kind of greater population insight at near real time. And in settings such as low and middle income countries where population data is scarce, this is particularly in kind of excellent source of data in order to support humanitarian and development applications, where very often, because of the lack of data, it's very difficult for development and humanitarian actors to make decisions that are based on evidence, and therefore there's quite a lot of people who are missed and who do not gain from the intervention that are put in place. So I think that's is quite essential to have access to this type of data that is quite, in terms of volume, is very high, and it can be accessed at near real time.
Thank you. What about you, Lamin? What do you think are the most valuable benefits of the data?
Thank you very much for that. Of course, if you look at mobile network data, it enables near real-time insights into internal migration and seasonal mobility, urbanization patterns, cross-border flows, displacement during shocks, such as floods, epidemics, and conflicts. And for countries like the Gambia, where census updates are periodic, mobile data fills the essential temporal gap, supporting dynamic population estimates and service planning. Strategically, the value lies in supporting adaptive planning, improving disaster response, enhances urban infrastructure targeting. It also enables social protection targeting, for instance, enabling socioeconomic vulnerability measurements, informal settlement density assessments, and also it helps to do network-based poverty signal development. And these are things that traditionally are not possible with our surveys that we conduct, in a more frequent manner. So in short, it helps to support social registries through cash transfer systems, and in short, it improves beneficiary targeting, shock response, social protection mechanisms, and also early warning indicators. So these and many other things are valuable issues that can be addressed through mobile phone data usage.
Okay. So can you tell us a bit more about the status of the initiative in the Gambia? So you said you're the lead for the big data initiative and specifically mobile phone. Can you tell us a bit more about where the Gambia is at with this type of work and the partnership that you may have developed with some operators as well?
Thank you very much. So our journey started since in 2020 when we had a discussion with the World Bank, and at the time there was also an interest from World Bank to support initiatives around use of mobile phone data. So we discussed, and then we thought there was need for us to engage the MNOs. So what we first did was to organize a workshop and then brought stakeholders, including the MNOs, the regulator, and then the ministry, the relevant ministries. So we sold the idea to them, and for for some reason there was just magic that almost everybody in the room was positive about the idea, and they just bought into it. From there, we had a second workshop
Mm-hmm.
where we started discussing. But the good thing was we went through the regulator because all the MNOs have license requirements to supply data or certain level of data to the MNOs. And when we assess the data that they were having, we realized that there are one or two components of the CDR data that were not supplied by the MNOs to the regulator, and we requested for all the details records. I mean, in terms of columns of the data that they produce to be supplied,
Mm-hmm.
and thereafter, World Bank, of course, they did a procurement to recruit a technical assistant for technical support for us, which was University of Tokyo, and we started producing. But then our initial plan was to measure internal mobility. But then there was COVID. So there was no data, real-time data that the government and the partners could rely on to able to help the ministries to do surveillance of the population. And our immediate interest shifted from measuring internal mobility to um, measuring to help the ministry to do surveillance measurement. So immediately we helped the ministry, and thereafter we continued with the initial planning to do internal mobility measurements, which was successfully done. And then we also are now doing transport planning. Of course, we are also discussing with the Department of the Social Protection Agency to see how best the data can be used for dynamic updates of the social registry. But all this was done when there was no formal agreement. But along the way, we were also working on a formal agreement so that at least there could be sustained data flow from the MNOs to the regulator without any hitches. And luckily, by end of last year, 2025, we were able to sign an MOU with the regulator who represents the MNOs in the country. So now Gambia has a working MOU that enables their access. What we are now working on is to sign a data share agreement between the World Bank, the regulator, and then the NSO.
Okay, so in the Gambia, just to clarify, you're not directly working with the operators, you're working through the regulator.
Yes, so the regulator is intermediary that gets the data,
Okay.
but they're also a partner in the scheme because we try to develop ways that they can also benefit from the projects.
Mm-hmm.
So our data access is through the regulator and not directly from the MNOs to the NSO.
Okay. Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense. So I think you're touching on one aspect is there are different ways you can set up the partnership with the private sector, and some is via the regulator and the government agencies, but sometimes we go directly through the operator. So maybe Afia, I'll come to you now. So as we touched base earlier, so Flowminder is working with Vodacom Congo. Do you want to tell us a bit more about the partnership and what, from your experience, has made that relationship possible, first setting it up, but also maintaining it going forward? Afia.
Yeah, thank you. So I think for us setting up the partnership that we have with Vodacom DRC, has been the partnership that we had with the World Food Program. So that was quite a key entry point for us in the country. So ensure that the regulator really understood the importance of accessing and processing the data in order for us to have an impact or to support what the World Food Program was doing at the time. I think it was it was during the Ebola crisis in the DRC in 2018. And so what was the second aspect of your question? So
what are the actions that makes a partnership successful? So what works engaging with a mobile network operator?
Well, I think what is key is to ensure that we have a level of, at least they have a level of trust in what we do. So you have the expertise for us as an organization to be able to access, to process, and to analyze their data whilst aligning with their own internal procedures and requirements. So we have in place, for instance, we have an MOU, we have DPAs that, data processing agreement and data sharing agreement that we need to put in place to ensure that we can access the data and process it in the way that respect and follow their own internal procedures. And I think that element is also important with the regulator because the data is not only the MNO's data, it's also the regulator's data. So it's important that the regulator also is aware, has been aware of what we do, and also has that element of trust in our ability as an organization to access and process the data in a way that we are respecting the country's legislation. So I think those are some of the elements that have helped us in terms of our partnership with Vodacom. And I could also talk about data protection, but I think this is something that we can maybe cover on later on. And then maybe one other thing that I would like to add is in regards to the impact aspect of the partnership. So obviously MNOs are their businesses, and when they to be able to raise their profile beyond only making profit, they want to make sure that they can demonstrate that they can also contribute to the well-being of the population for which they are providing their services. So I think those are some of the key elements that really supports the partnership that we do have here in DRC with Vodacom.
Okay, and do you want to talk a bit about the foundation, maybe the relationship with their foundation? Or...
Yeah, so I think okay, so that would align a bit more with the impact aspect of it. So I've said how it's quite critical beyond showing that we have the expertise to work with that data. There is the impact aspect whereby Vodacom Foundation's role is to support the well-being of Congolese population. And so what we do in the project that we have, so for instance, we do have a project with the Ministry of Health where we provide them with population movement and population estimates data for them to improve the efficiency of their vaccination services. So when we work with the foundation, we work with their communication teams, for instance, to ensure that the stories like of impact of how we are using the data to support the Ministry of Health is actually broadcasted in their different platforms to show that they are not only making profit, but they are also using their data for good. And I think that's one of the reasons why it really contributes and pushes MNOs to open and make their data available, is because the data can be used not only for business reason, but also for good. And so that's the reason why we also work very closely, not only with the business unit of Vodacom, but also with the foundation, which is a non-profit and supports the country's population.
Right. Thank you, Afia. So we've just touched base on like some of the more practical work, mainly coming from an organization like ours, being a technical service provider. But Lamine, so you represent the National Statistics Office. Do you want to tell us a bit more about what a good engagement between a government institution and the private sector looks like, but also like what advice you would give to another statistical service or institution if they were to consider reaching out to operators? Can you tell us about your perspective on that? Thank you.
Yes, so this is a complex issue, um, especially in developing countries. But then when it comes to an engagement between the public institutions and the private sector, especially around CDR data, issues go beyond a single MOU or a one-time data transfer. In practice, it looks like an institutionalized, um, trust-based collaboration, technically embedded collaboration that produces sustained public value while protecting the commercial and citizen interest. It moves from transactional to institutional um, frameworks. It looks at long-term framework agreement
Mhm.
which has clear governance structures, recurrent data pipelines, um, defined production outputs, institutional budget lines. You know, this is a bit complex, but then you also the other component is there should be clear legal and governance architecture.
Mhm.
We define rules. Who owns raw data? Who processes it? Who disseminates or publishes the indicators? Who audits privacy? You also need to have legal safeguards such as data minimization principles, the anonymization, strict anonymization standards, um, only access to only aggregate level data, no access to individual identifiers, regulatory compliance with national data protection laws. And you also need to make sure you have a joint steering committee, maybe bringing in the MNO or the telecom operators, the NSO,
Mhm.
the Data Protection Authority, or the regulator, civil society. All this builds credibility and transparency. Then you look at the issue of the NSO and its technical capacity. You must make sure you integrate technical capacity into the NSO because you want to have regular statistical input, but also um, outputs. You want to integrate this into a national statistical production cycle, and you also want to make sure you have sound methodological documentation that can be reused. For example, mobility indicators included in annual statistical abstracts.
Mhm.
You can also have CDR calibrated population estimates, urban flow matrices. No. So it's not clear cut to say, okay, this is the perfect structure, but you need to look at all the complexities around what can be acceptable by the stakeholders that exist in the country.
Mhm.
And different countries have different um, issues in their countries. So as an NSO, when you need to have a proper mapping of your stakeholders and have a proper way of selling your idea to the stakeholders, and most
Yeah.
importantly, the the MNO or the MNO network that you have in the country, because they are also um, they also made people, or I mean, their subscribers. They gave them the the assurance that their data will be protected. And that protection component, that that the breach of that is one fundamental thing that you should be able to sell and convince them about before you are able to 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 have a way to go about this. When it comes to, you also need to make sure you create mutual value. Let's say for government is looking at better planning, faster crisis response, improved targeting. But when it comes to the telecoms, what what are going to be their benefits? Create corporate social responsibility visibility for them, evidence-based infrastructure planning. I will tell you, for instance, one of the operators at some point they almost went out of business. But when they were coming back, that was when we already had the first analysis results of the analysis when it comes to internal mobility, and we helped them with that data, with their own data. I mean, telecom data, to know how the population is distributed, and and so on. And they use that data to get back on the ground, and that was very, very, very valuable. Within a space of 3 months, people started abandoning other operators to get back to get to get back to them. So
Yeah.
this was a typical use of a typical value for them. You can also improve their regulatory dialogue between the MNOs and then the operator, and you know you also need to make sure you have something called privacy by design implementation. For instance, in mature models, of course, most developing countries are still, not at the process of getting to the mature level when it comes to the majority matrices that assesses the level of majority of countries. But in major models, they don't never leave secure environments. Instead, what you see is secure data enclaves, remote query systems, aggregated outputs only, differential privacy layers. So these are all things that you need to um, uh, think around. But the gold standard is this: you bring the algorithm to the data, not the data to the government, because this reduces the reputational and legal risks for telecom operators. So as an so you need to see how best you can um, you can safeguard the operators when it comes to their reputation and anything that can pose risks to them legally. Again, you need to prioritize continuous capacity building. Capacity building is one thing that you have to prioritize, both at the NSO, but also at the regulators and the MNOs, because
Yeah.
they should not have that overall dependence on the NSO to produce even the basic um, value from their own data that they produce. So you need to have joint training sessions, secondments between institutions. You can have shared methodological development, or even when it comes to publications of papers, you can see how they are going to be co-authoring of technical papers.
Yeah.
So this is one thing, and one thing I don't want to forget, that is the financing model. You need to try to develop a sustainable financing model, maybe a multi-year budget allocation, and if possible, cost sharing arrangements, which is not very nice to tell the MNOs whose data you are getting almost for free. But some of them might have interest beyond what you could offer, and you might want to say, okay, well, this will be possible if we have this cost sharing and cost sharing arrangement. And then you can also the infrastructure in the investment plan. For instance, in the Gambia, we at the regulator is where we build in infrastructure, the servers and everything else. Are stationed at the regulator. It's not, they are not at the MNO. Sorry, at the NSO. But also, we want our next round, we want to make sure we have the servers installed at the MNOs themselves, and see how best their systems can also be improved. That is also a benefit that they would have by investing in their infrastructure. But also, we want to develop a clear cost recovery mechanisms.
Yeah.
But this is going to be also maintained at the MNO, and that is the plan. So these are all things that are values for the MNOs as well as the regulator.
Thank you so
Okay.
much, Lamin. I think you've been really good at, summarizing the different elements that people need to bear in mind when they're setting up a mobile initiative. So as a summary, you talked about the importance of identifying and engaging with the different stakeholders, understanding the needs and the requirement from the regulatory side, the operator sides, but also the subscribers, because it's actually at the end of the day, it's their data that is being processed. We also talked about the importance of privacy and making sure that the methods and the data access models respect the different laws and are actually secure by design. I really like the fact that you talked about the sustainability aspect. So from a governance perspective as well as a financing perspective, I think it's helpful, but also the value creation. So why are we doing what we're doing, which is also quite important from an engagement perspective. So maybe I'll move on to that. Let's start with you, Afia. Can you maybe give us an example of a mobile data project that you've been involved in that had really strong impact on the ground and benefited the population in DRC?
Yeah. So I'd briefly mention one of our main flagship project in the DRC is in the health sector. So we have been for the past 6 years or so, we have been supporting the DRC Ministry of Health to make their vaccination services, their effort to ensure that their vaccination services are more efficient and effective, with a key component on equity. And one of the things that they've really been meaning to do is to ensure that they can reach out to population that are often left out in their planning. And with the data that we have been able to provide them with regular reports, thanks to the mobile phone data that we have access to. So the data that's providing them with population estimates and population movements within their health zones, but also within the different provinces of the DRC. And currently in their planning, what they do, they use static population data estimates that do not always take into account new population who come into the health zone or into the provinces. And so one of the very good impact story that we have as part of that project is in a health zone where the data has really been used and there has been a great level of ownership thanks to the capacity strengthening work that we have been able to do with them over the course of the project. They have been able to use the reports that we provide them on a monthly basis to
And we've lost her at the worst possible time. Let's see if she comes back.
Sorry.
Afia, we lost you and we were able to, and then we don't know what you were able to do.
Okay, am I back? Can you
You're
hear
back,
me?
you're back. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Sorry. Okay. Yeah, so my connection is not great. So yeah, I was talking about the case of a health zone. If I can just go back so that I can frame it in a better way. So they have been able to use demonstrate that they have more population that are coming into enough additional resources to reach out to those population and to the additional health services that they need. So for a very long time, they have been telling the local and national authorities that they have new population coming in, but there haven't been, there hasn't been any additional resources given to them because they didn't have any statistics that could prove that. So they have used our data for that. And they have received additional resources, which meant that they could go into areas where there were additional population and provide them, for the children, because it was the vaccination service, they had more vaccine and they were able to vaccinate more children. And as they have been using our reports, they have also noticed that there has been an increase in the vaccination rates coverage. So the work that we have been doing it has been part, so we can't say that it's only what we provide them that helped them to increase their vaccination coverage in their health zone, but it has really contributed to them to have more resources and therefore vaccinate more children. So it's really part of a solution that has worked for that particular health zone. And we would have not been able to do that work if we didn't have regular access to Vodacom data that enables us to do the different analysis that we do in order to provide insight on population estimates and population movement within the health zone, and then also across that province and across the country. So that's one key example that we have, and yeah.
It's a lovely example. Thank you, Afia. I'm just going to go back to you again, just for a quick question we've had in the chat. So there is someone asking about our work, the work of Flowminder in the east of DRC with the war and the conflict. And they're asking whether we can create or share mobility estimates and the different consideration. Can you talk to us a bit more on that aspect of the work?
Yeah, sure. So the monthly reports that we provide is at health zone level, but it's also at province level, like I said. And those are now available to everybody. The latest reports that we released was in December. It was for December 2025 data. Is accessible on our website. And this is because for a very long time, the data in the DRC, so the reports that we have been producing have only been available to the Ministry of Health for vaccination purpose, because that was the agreement that we had with the regulator and also with Vodacom. But we have, obviously, the data can be used beyond health and vaccination applications. So we have really worked a lot with the MNO, but also with the regulator to explain that to them. That's why we can now share the data broadly. So that data can also be used to understand the trends, population trends, and how people are moving in Eastern DRC. So we have been able to see, for instance, last year when the M23 invaded Goma, how the population were really leaving that province. So North Kivu and eventually South Kivu, we could see how in the health zone in the province, how the population were decreasing. Because we have data that covers a year. Now reports the data is over a year, so we could see the tendency, how population changes over time, and also across the space. So that is on the monthly reports that we produce. We also do displacement analysis. But currently, we are working with RPTC and the MNO to make those type of analysis available. But yeah, so that's how much I can say about it. Sorry.
Great, thank you, Afia. Lamine, do you want to share one success story from the Gambia, something you're really proud of around the use of mobile phone data in your country?
Yeah, like I said, we conducted two major analyses. One is the support of the COVID response mechanisms by helping the ministry to able to know how the population is flowing from which area to which area, and be able to put surveillance sites at least to track the outbreak. but also we we did internal mobility analysis
Mm-hmm.
that support the census data with regards to how the population is moving from which district to which district in terms of in the internal migration. And as a result, both the local government and the central government are able to have better understanding of which districts have more of the population and from where they are flowing. This helps in better planning for their social amenities.
Mm-hmm.
This also led to the interest in doing urban planning because now, based on the internal mobility, we understood that we have a lot of rural urban migration, but where are those people mostly concentrated? And based on that analysis, we now understand that the three major urban local government areas are the major recipients. But before before this analysis, we never understood that the Brikama LGA constitutes over 79% of all that movement. And now, this has enabled World Bank and the Ministry of Transport to initiate a new analysis into transport planning. Now, because here in the morning, if you get up from Brikama to want to go to Banjul for work, schools close at 2 o'clock, or work closes at 4 o'clock. Between 4 o'clock and 8 p.m., 4 p.m. and 8 p.m., the kind of traffic that you see on the roads is mind-boggling. Based on the knowledge of the internal movement, we are now doing another analysis on transport planning to know how the population is moving, where they are most located, where do we have more congestions, at what time of the days do we have congestions at where. This will now enable the Ministry of Transport and the World Bank to initiate a new project to be able to know where they are going to place diversions so that traffic can be decongested, and where do we have to create more road networks so that people can easily take um, those roads without going to through major areas that will stop their smooth movement to and from work or their business locations. So this is the third one that we are currently working on, and it's almost at the final stage. We currently are looking at some adjustments here and there, and to reflect some realities. Yeah.
Great, thank you so
Back to you.
much. I think based on the time, it would be worth getting more audience Q&A. So I've put in the chat for people to start asking questions. I'm going to make a formal request now to anyone in the room to ask any questions to Afia and Lamin around either working with mobile network operators as well as how to actually use that data to create impact, whether it's working with the Stats Office or with organizations like Flowminder to support humanitarian statistics or development action. So I'm going to suggest we have the few minutes of awkward silence until the questions come in, and let's see where that gets us to. Can be any questions that comes to mind with regards to engaging the private sector, even though in this room we're specialized in the mobile data aspect of the work. So you can use the chat, or you can use, there is a QA box on Zoom. Okay, so we've got one question that is, what have been unintended consequences and obstacles in these partnerships, and how have you managed them effectively? So can you tell us a bit more about some of the challenges you may have faced when working with an operator? Who wants to take that one first. I'm tempting Lamin to give it to you first because you're already unmuted.
Okay, so um, one major challenge that we have when it comes to engaging the operators is sustainability of the focal focal persons and transfer of processes from one person to another person, because we have suffered a lot with the major operator in the Gambia. They have, from the onset, they have agreed and supplied data to us without hitches. But the problem is the two focal persons whom we've been working with from the onset have moved on, and those who have replaced them knew almost nothing about what we have been doing. And the supervisor who was supervising the previous persons also got replaced, and there was no transfer of what existed. So when those replacements happen, we had a lot of problems because the regulator was not having it smooth with them to supply the data as it was agreed. They wanted to go back to the default agreement, where the basic data columns were provided, and that was a problem. But at the end of the day, we were able to negotiate that. Then there is another operator, which is mainly private, a locally owned, not 100% locally owned, but majorly locally owned. Well, until today, we're having resistance from them because they have a lot of influence in government, and they have vehemently denied or refused to give access to even the basic data. Even to be attending meetings had been a problem. And since we just have methods to use only one data set, so one MNO data, we did not have it much of a problem. But we believe having all the MNOs agree to sharing data with the regulator for us to have better analysis could be something that will add value. So it's 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 a problem because when some agencies have a lot of political influence in the country, they can jeopardize your ability to maneuver, unless they have direct benefits that they can see themselves in. And that is exactly what they are looking at. They are not looking at all these benefits, all the values that I mentioned. They are looking at monetary benefit that should come directly from World Bank, and not through the regulator, but between World Bank and them directly, and which definitely we're not going to accept. So it could be complex. It's not a one cap fit all. You can have different problems here and there. But the other thing is, some MNOs don't have the technical capacity to deal with their data in such a way that you will be able to get the aggregated data. Is either the technical capacity at the personal level is not there, or the infrastructure does not exist with them to be able to anonymize their data set. So it's not clear cut, but these are few of the issues that you can solve from with the MNOs. Back to you.
Thank you, Lamin. Afia, do you want to complement that answer?
Yes, I think on a technical level, it can be quite challenging to work with MNOs because as a technical organization, we do need to work with different teams within the MNO for us to have access to the data, to process it, and to do the analytical work that we do. So, for instance, we have to work with the data center, Vodacom, with the network team, with the external affairs, with the foundation. So you have all these different parts of Vodacom that for which we need to have different people, and it can become quite difficult to navigate the system, but also to unlock some of the blockers that may slow down our work. So that has been a challenge in terms of the technical work that we do. So in terms of some of the applications or the relationship with the government, so we have been in talk, for instance, to get the force displacement analysis to be more available. So we have been in talk for a very long time because the MNO cannot make a decision themselves. They have to have the regulator approve first before any sort of new analysis is made available to external users. And it's a whole bureaucracy that is behind it, and it takes a very long time. So we have actually learned to be extremely patient and to constantly chase people at whether it's at the MNO or at the regulator, because we have to always remember that the MNO is a business and we come in with as a non-profit. So they don't one of the key things that they gain from what we do with them, the partnership, is, like I said before, is kind of raising their profile in terms of what they do beyond the profit. But yeah, that's quite a key challenge. So the bureaucracy can be quite slow to get new approvals, but also on the technical side, it can be quite challenging to navigate the system when there are so multiple teams that you need to work with. Yeah. Sophie, you're on mute. You're on mute.
I knew I would make that mistake. Sorry. So yeah, I was saying I think both of you made a really good point around the challenge around the culture from like a non-profit organization in the H2H space, like Flowminder, the culture of the NSOs, but also the culture of the private sector, who all of us have different objectives, but also a common objective, and it's about finding the right way of achieving that, and also making sure that it's sustainable from a resource perspective as well. We've got another question on the chat around actually cost and internal capacity. So the person is making the point around when you have a partnership between two private sector organizations, they usually have similar systems, like profit, high level, cutting edge system, but humanitarian organizations often don't have that internal capacity. So the question is around, are there any constraints to working through the kind of data that Flowminder provides or the stats office produces for humanitarian organization? Like, what are the challenges for a humanitarian organization to engage with this type of data? And I think there is a distinction, of course, between data and insight, etc., and how it's processed and released. Who wants to? You both muted yourself. I can't actually. Now I see what you're doing. Okay, Lamine, go ahead.
Sorry, can you repeat the question again?
Yeah, so you have private sector to private sector partnership that usually have similar systems, so high level cutting edge systems. Humanitarian organization, they don't have the same resources. They may not have the same, software and capacity. So the question is around, do you see any constraint for humanitarian organization in working through the kind of data that is being produced from mobile operator networks? Is there any challenges in building this type of pipeline as well?
Yes, of course, there's challenge. But that is natural to have such a challenge, especially if you are getting into something that is new, in terms of your operations. So you naturally wouldn't have capacity for everything that you would need to do in the future. What you do is to have a proper mapping of what you need and what capacity exists. Once there is capacity, there is lack of capacity in a particular area, you need to look for collaboration. You need to look for partnerships. Um, this is where your negotiation skills become very paramount. Then a lot of some of the capacities cannot just be learned on the go. The partnerships will now be outsourcing your analysis um, to experts, to firms, to um, inst- um, institutions, colleges, universities that have the capacity. But then what you do now in this is, while you outsource it, you also need to find a way to build capacity, at least to the minimum level that will enable you to be able to deal with the data. Because if you know very well that financially you cannot sustain continuously outsourcing the analysis to private sector to farms to do the analysis, and you need to make sure that you build capacity within your institution, at least to the very basic minimum that enables you to produce the statistics that will be able to help you to make decisions. So the initial challenge is you have to have a proper understanding of what you need, what don't you have to produce what you need, and how do you build partnerships and collaboration to be able to get what you need from the start. But as you do that, you need to build into that capacity, that partnership, a capacity building component to the bare minimum that enables you to produce your statistics for your decision making.
Mhm.
Back to you.
Thank you. Afia, do you want to give Flowminder's perspective?
Yeah, it's a bit similar to what Lamin has said. There is the capacity strengthening is quite, is very important. So at Flowminder, we have been around since 2010. And we obviously have we have the expertise. We have a team of data scientists, of statisticians who can analyze billions data points, who are developing, constantly developing and strengthening our statistical models. So we do have that in place as a non-profit organization. And we do have the infrastructure. So I think we have been around for a long time we have a software that we install behind the firewall of MNOs, where we have an active pipeline. So that's something that we as an organization, non-profit, we are capable of doing. So when we go in country to support government or NSOs, there are two elements in terms of capacity strengthening. So there's a capacity strengthening that I'd mentioned earlier on with the health team, where we support them to understand the data and to use it for their services. And then there is, on the other side, capacity strengthening, a bit like what Lamin was saying, for institutions such as the NSO or academics at public health schools. So the request is more for them to be able to produce the data themselves. And one of the things that we always say is that it is a long process to support them in that exercise. So there is the whole legality around accessing the data and processing it. So there is conversation with the MNO, with the regulator, to ensure that they can have the data in the first place. And I know that in Ghana, we have worked with the NSO to support them to be able to produce reports using I think it was for the time is Telecel now, using the data that they have access to from Telecel. But it is a long process. It is not impossible. It is a long process. So it depends on the needs. Again, like Lamin said, once you have made it clear that you have their needs, Flowminder as an organization is always available to support NSOs or other organizations like academic institutions to develop their needs. I think it's just like, in terms of the timing, it takes a long time, but it's definitely possible to do.
Thank you, Afia. Yeah, I think the key thing here is really around like focusing on what you do best. And as a humanitarian organization, building a partnership with either the stats office, getting the data from them, or an organization like Flowminder is really making sense, because we specialize in the data processing. But maybe, Afia, if I may add, is around it's not just the data, but we also produce information products where we summarize the findings and we produce, like PDF with maps and graphs and things. So it actually can be easily consumed for people on the ground. So there are different ways you can do it. You can go into the data production and the capacity strengthening. There is also this partnership where we produce the data and develop solutions for the humanitarian sector as well. So I would say speak to organizations that are specialized in this type of data processing, and they can support you in that process as well, from accessing the data, but also getting generating the insights you need, because there are different methods depending on the applications and the sector. Right, I think we had time. So I'm gonna give everyone a chance to ask a few final questions. But while you do that, Lamine, Afia, I'm gonna ask you a final question from me, which is one key takeaway. So if there is one thing you would like the audience to remember leaving this session around engaging with mobile network operators and the value of mobile phone data for their work, so what would it be? If there is a very short answer, one key takeaway from your perspective. Lamine, over to you.
One thing that I would say is define your motivation early and make sure the MNOs have a benefit that they will see in the partnership. If they don't see themselves there, forget it. You'll struggle to have a successful journey in this MNO ecosystem. Back to you.
Right. Thank you so much, Lamine. Yeah, Afia?
For me, I would say that trust is paramount. You won't be able to work with MNOs if they don't trust in your expertise, in your ability to work with their data, and also impact matters. It's important for them to see the impact of them opening their data and making it available for good. So, two things: trust and impact.
Great, thank you. Motivation, trust, and impact are the three takeaways of today's session. Lamine, Afia, I'm gonna set you free, and I would like to thank you so much for being here today and talking about your experience and sharing your learnings. We could be here for hours talking about mobile phone data initiatives and how to make them successful, setting them up, the challenges. So it's kind of the beginning of a conversation, but we are all available to discuss it further. I'm going to put the Flowminder email on the chat. Lamine, I don't know if you want to put yours as well, if people want to reach out to you and discuss it a bit more. But yeah, no, thank you so much, Afia. Enjoy Kinshasa and all of the great work you're doing there. And Lamine, thank you so much. It's always good to have you on board for this discussion, and also wish you the very best in your projects. And everyone, thank you for coming today.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sophie.
Thank
Thank you,
you. Goodbye.
Sophie.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone. Bye.